Hello, BookTube. All right, we're continuing with my library tour. Ad infinitum. We have an enormous amount of books still to go. And we are doing this east wall here in the front room, which is mostly history. So those of you who aren't interested in history, these probably won't be the library tours for you. And we are down here in Puppy Terry. We're down at the bottom shelf of this thin bookcase that's all the way to the end. And then we'll move on, and I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do. The next bookcase over on this wall is, shelved normally like books should be. And then at the top, I have books shelved normally like books should be, and then I have steadily, over time, piled books on top of them. So I not only don't know how I'm going to dig out from under that, but I also don't know where I'm going to put the camera. But I'll figure it out. This last one is easy, though. All it requires is the entire lower half of my body going numb while I sit here and do this. So what is this first one? Oh, okay. This is fantastic. This is just fantastic. One of the only books that I have on the subject, because it's so good, that the only thing that I would ever get would be the hardcover. I would like a hardcover of this book, and I don't have it. This is Charles Esdale's Napoleons Wars, a military history of Bonaparte that is just terrific. Gets rid of the bloat, gets rid of the folderol, and is beautifully written. And this is a Penguin trade paperback that I got, I believe, at the Brattle. I got this in 2013. I've read it a couple of times since then, which is the spine is cracked. So if I could find a hardcover, the hardcover always put out by Viking or something like that, I would grab it. Okay, all right. This next one is by Adam Sisman. This is Boswell's Presumptuous Task. This is the story of the writing of the life of Johnson. So you get a lot of Boswell in here, and you get a lot of Johnson in here, but it's mainly about the generation of a book and what followed immediately afterwards. There was, we think of, thanks to Macaulay and a bunch of other people, we think of Boswell's Life of Johnson as this solitary promontory, this thing that came out of nowhere and defined what a modern biographical blockbuster is. But actually, even while Dr. Johnson was alive, there was active speculation, a lot of finagling and maneuvering to be the person who would write that book. Everybody knew that there was a massive bestseller to be written. And a whole bunch of people tried. There are a whole bunch of other books. And this is all about not only Boswell's personality, but what it was that caused this book to work in a way that the others didn't. I can tell you what that was. There's quite a bit. The book is very entertaining. There's quite a bit of theorizing on all sorts of levels, but I've read all those other contemporaneous or, immediately posthumous Johnson biographies. I can tell you what sets Boswell apart. And if you've ever read Boswell for more than 10 pages, will already know the answer. He's a hell of a writer. He's a hell of a writer. He's so entertaining. That's what did it. He doesn't believe ever that he deserves your attention. And so many of the big biographers, the so-called respectable biographers of Dr. Johnson, did. And that continues today. If you look at modern biographies, look at the biographies that have come out in 2019, you'll find a whole bunch of them where you read a little into them, and suddenly you realize what is causing that slight irritating impression in your mind. It's that you're getting the clear impression that the author expects to have your attention. Whether the author thinks that it's the subject that will do that, you'll find that often with Churchill and Hitler biographies. They just assume you're going to pay reverential attention because of the subject. Or whether it's because of their own reputation, but one way or another, you get 30 pages into a book and realize, okay, this author's not working at all, and the reason they're not working is because they think they don't have to. Boswell never thinks that. Never. He is largely writing for himself. I think that's part of what does it, but he's so entertaining that you don't ever have that suspicion, and that's great. Okay, this is Eric Hinderaker. This is Boston's Massacre, the trade paperback of Boston's Massacre, the latest study of the Boston Massacre. I'm ashamed to say, now that I'm holding this up, I have this, but I do not have the classic Boston Massacre book from 70 years ago. I don't have a copy of that. Oh, no. Can that really be true? Well, I will have to check, because I think there are more American Revolution books down the line. There bloody well better be. There have been a whole bunch of great books about Boston Massacre and about what it means, and also about breaking down exactly what happened. everybody thinks Crispus Attucks. But there are a whole bunch of specifics of the Boston Massacre that actually take on a larger significance when you consider what, no pun intended, snowballed from this event. I actually have an article by an old friend of mine who's now gone, who wrote a fantastic article for the old Boston Phoenix back when it was a genuine third paper, and wrote lots of long-form great literature. And he examined everything and came to the conclusion that some of us have come to, which is that there was a good deal more coordination going on here behind the scenes on the colonist side than historians typically like to allow. This was really good, but it shouldn't be my only Boston Massacre book, to say the least. Good Lord. Okay, this is another paperback release. I go through this pattern. A lot of you will know this already. I get an advance copy, I get a review copy, and then I get a finished copy. And then I typically get rid of both of them. I send them away to you or to friends of mine. I send them away figuring you have too many books already. You can't keep everything you get. And then surely in, like, say, one time out of three, I'll regret that decision. The book will stick with me. It happens a lot with fiction. It happens with history too, where I will realize months down the line, oh, you shouldn't have got rid of that. And then I'm always glad for my third strike. my third swing at bat is the paperback release of the book. I get a lot of those as well. And that's one of these. I was very glad. This is David Moss's Democracy, a case study. And it's ordinarily not the kind of thing I would like, but he does a really good job of studying what democracy is, what it always has been, what its strengths are, what its vulnerabilities are. This is a perfect case of when I no longer had the book in any advanced form, I kind of missed it. I kind of wanted it. So I was happy when I got the paperback. Okay. All right. This next one, oh my. Okay. This is a great series. Just fantastic. If you ever see it at a yard sale, which is the only place you ever will see it, no one will reprint these. Penguin ought to reprint these with the artwork. Penguin ought to reprint every letter of these. They are so valuable. This is a journalist named Mark Sullivan, a century ago, decided to take what we would now call a snapshot of his age, of his immediate age, the 1880s to the 1920s, and not to edit it. So you get all sorts of big, high-profile newspaper articles, what was making the news then, the assassination of President McKinley, the administration of Theodore Roosevelt, the contentious election that followed. You get all of that, but you also get everything else. You get what was popular in the art world, what songs were people singing, what music was selling in bookstores, how were farms doing. He called it Our Times. And this is volume 1, The Turn of the Century, and this is volume 2, America Finding Herself. There were 5 volumes, and I don't think I have any others. Well, I hope I do. Somewhere here, I hope I do. They're so good. Hey, let me show you why. Because everything is included. It's all black and white photos, but everything is included. Fashion, transportation, fads, all of it. He and his research assistants, his 2 research assistants, just amassed everything and put it in a book. The kind of history nobody writes right now. That's invaluable. Absolutely invaluable. And also tremendous fun. I love going through these things. I have 2 volumes here, but I'm hoping that I have all 5 volumes. I'm just assuming that I do somewhere. Okay, then we have a trade paperback. This does not belong here. I know that because I know that I have somewhere here a World War II shelf of books. I know that I do. This is Andrew Roberts' The Storm of War. This is the trade paperback of his book, The Storm of War. It's a 1-volume overview of World War II, the kind of thing that he had written many World War II themed books, but his friends and his agent have been saying, this is a good idea, do a 1-volume World War II book. And he did, and this is terrific. Anybody who's ever read him, if you've read him, you'll know what you're in for, which is that he's an absolutely catchy writer. Just a totally catchy writer. Talk about a writer who never assumes that he is getting your attention. Who always assumes he has to earn it. Perfect example. He's written a bunch of other stuff too, including a biography of Napoleon Bonaparte called Napoleon the Great. That is another book that I want. You would think, well, surely you have it, right? It was a New York Times bestseller here in the United States. You got the advanced copy on camera. You got the finished copy on camera. I don't. I don't have it. I got rid of those copies for one specific reason, because this is a rare instance where the form matters. I know what I want when it comes to that book. In the UK, Napoleon the Great was called Napoleon the Great. Now, I don't agree with that title at all, but it has panache. In America, it was retitled Napoleon a Biography or Napoleon a Life or something boring like that. And on top of that, the cover design was changed. In the UK, the cover design is fleur-de-lis on a field of white. And in America, it's just a boring portrait of Napoleon Bonaparte. I want Napoleon the Great. That's what I want. And I will find it. The Brattle will provide. Somebody will bring that book over on a transatlantic flight, realize that it's 900 pages long, and not want to take it back. They'll dump it at the Brattle, and I will get it. But that I don't have that yet. But I have a lot of other Andrew Roberts. We'll encounter him again on this wall, because we're just starting the history wall. There's lots more books to go here. Then we have another popular historian. Andrew Roberts and Max Hastings are sort of... Andrew Roberts, Max Hastings, and Anthony Beaver are sort of the three big popular World War II era historians, although Andrew Roberts voyages afield, and so do the others. And this is one where Max Hastings does. This is Catastrophe 1914, about the beginning of World War I. And it's really good. Max Hastings has a sort of signature thing that he does, where he will find dozens and dozens of people in the personal records of history and let them speak, rather than summarize or just ignore. So you get that in his World War II book all over. That's why it's so long. And you get that in here as well. And it's very interesting. It's a very interesting approach. I have lots of books on the beginning of World War I. We've seen some in this tour, right? We saw Christopher Clark's book, The Sleepwalkers. Yeah, there it is. And they should all be together. The World War I books should all be together. But we'll get to that. And then the last thing, oh boy. Okay, talk about wanting to have a hardcover. The last thing on this shelf, the last thing in this bookcase for this part of the history tour is a great work. An absolutely great work. Something that, if you're the least bit interested, and considering that it made every detail of your world, you should read it. And that's this. This is Christianity, the First 3,000 Years by Dermot McCullough. This is a Penguin trade paperback that I've had to reinforce, but it's a 1,000-page book, so a hardcover would be great. Next time I see a hardcover of this thing, I'll grab it. And I cannot recommend it strongly enough. There is something brilliant on literally every page of this book. So no matter how familiar you think you are with the subject, you got to read it if you haven't. You just got to. It's so good. It is so good. In this case, if you've heard it talked about, if you've heard mention of it from, I don't even know, Mary Beard all the way to Christopher Hitchens. In this case, if you've heard the hype is genuine. The hype is deserved. This is that good. So I'm glad we end with that. That's great. I gotta just tuck it onto the shelf, or I'm going to be severely tempted to dig into it. And I cannot afford the time to get lost in a 1,000-page book. I cannot do it. So I'm going to wrap this up for now and try not to look in that direction. But I'll be back. I will figure out the camera angle. God help us, I'm just looking at it. Jeez. Well, I will figure out a camera angle. If other booktubers can do it, so can I. And I will be back. Who knows what I'll have to do, but I will be back tomorrow to finish out the week. We won't do library tours on the weekend, but we'll finish out the week tomorrow with a chunk of that next bookcase. I'll figure it out. Thank you, BookTube.